And California's Assembly Education Committee has recommended a measure that would assign armed law enforcement officers to all school campuses in the state. It's in response to recent shootings at schools across the nation. The state would pay for the officers, and the bill by Republican James Gallagher of Yuba City still needs approval from a fiscal committee before it advances to the Assembly floor.
Now, joining us to talk about school security is Jeff Godown, Police Chief of Oakland Unified School District, who I had the, I'm not going to say pleasure, but you actually give seminars to students, to staff and faculty about what to do if an active shooter shows up.
Correct. I do the active shooter training, the run, hide, fight, flight scenario. I've conducted about 3 or 4 of those training sessions. A couple hundred people have come through the training process. I'm actually going to have another training session this Monday.
Now, it's rather disturbing what I heard you talk about, because basically you say is if an active shooter shows up with one of these automatic rifles, that basically the teachers and students are on their own for 5 to 8 minutes.
Yeah, usually the perpetrator knows when they come into that school and fire off that first round, they have between about 5 and 8 minutes to do as much damage as they can, because they know the police, the cavalry are going to come get them. So the teachers are up on their own. They're responsible for the safety of themselves and those students until the police can arrive.
That's rather disturbing. So what do you think of this idea of putting a police officer, not a security guard, in every school?
It's going to be a Herculean task. I understand the rationale as to why an elected official would want to throw something on the wall to see if it'll stick, and that's what we're seeing between bump stocks. The bottom line is they're not going to have a comprehensive gun control policy. No one is going to do it. Those politicians are going to wait these protesters out, and then they know eventually everybody will go home. There was no gun control after Columbine. There was no gun control after Sandy Hook, nor after Las Vegas, nor after the Pulse nightclub. But back to your question in reference to a police officer in every school, I don't think you need an armed police officer in every school, number one. The cost amount alone for, if I do the math just for Oakland Unified District, would be at least $100 million. Now, it'd be at least $10 to $15 million just for the Oakland School District. So multiply that by all the schools in the state of California, it's going to be a huge amount of money to put an armed cop. We had an armed officer in Florida, and that didn't make a difference.
We had one in Maryland, and it did.
Yes, but I can also say that the officer in Maryland did a great job. You and I have had this conversation before. Somebody comes in with that kind of high-powered weapon, putting those rounds down range, the weapon that I'm carrying on my belt right now, I'm going to be hard-pressed to be able to stop that person. And the person that did the shooting in Maryland was using a handgun. He wasn't using a long rifle such as an AR-15. So the weaponry alone can be a problem.
Metal detectors won't stop it.
No.
They'll just walk through the metal detectors. An armed presence on the campus may or may not stop it, but without that, what do we have for those 5 to 8 minutes except for these incredible massacres?
Listen, if there's money in the budget in the state of California, the United States, to put a police officer in every school, then I'm for it. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. It's really about the training. It's really about looking at the issues at the school. Almost every shooter at these schools, there was a pattern that people had seen prior to this event occurring, and they didn't look at it, they didn't investigate it, they didn't touch base with what was going on. For example, there were indicators that these folks had personal issues, had psychological issues. I think the FBI and the police department in Florida dropped the ball, and they admitted they had seen things that they didn't act on. At Oakland School Police Department, we probably had about 7 or 8 threats on the school since the shooting in Florida. Simple threats, either phone call threats or some graffiti written on the wall, and we do a good job of getting ahead of those and finding out if it's going to be a big problem before it gets to be a big problem.
Oakland is no stranger to guns in schools.
No.
No, it's been going on there for a long time. It's handguns and knives that show up in backpacks and stuff. That's different than what we're seeing. Now, it appears that these shootings, these mass shootings, occur in suburban and rural areas. And to be blunt about it, it's usually white kids or adults with long rifles.
Correct.
What's going on?
I can't answer as to why that is. I've tried to kind of investigate that and come up with some rationale as to why that is. Some of the logic that I've seen on the internet is the fact that a lot of the inner city schools do have metal detectors, and then maybe that's prohibiting some of these people from showing up in the campus, but I don't necessarily believe that. Somebody that's intent to kill a lot of people with a long weapon, such as the weapons that are used, they're not going to care about metal detectors. So I don't have an answer as to why it's male whites in suburban school areas.
Okay, if the Congress isn't going to act and get these guns off the streets or out of the hands of people, Is this just a fact of life in modern America then?
You know, in my training, what I tell people is, I've been doing this for 37 years, and the sad commentary where you and I sit today is you need to go home, or any parent needs to go home and have a conversation and tell their 3-year-old, quote, if someone comes into your school and tries to kill you today, this is what you need to do to protect yourself, and that's the world that we live in. It's unfortunate. If you were to ban all guns in this country right now, not manufacture another weapon, there's over 350 million guns in circulation, and I've been told there's somewhere between 10 and 15 million of the AR-15s in circulation today in the United States of America. That's a huge amount of handguns that are floating around. If we don't have a comprehensive handgun control, or we start looking at the weapons and getting them out of the hands of people, we're not going to, you and I are going to be back here 3 or 4 months having the same conversation. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen.
All right, thank you, Oakland School District Chief Jeff Godown. I would like to say that this was enlightening, but it was more frightening than anything else.